Hi and welcome. We're so excited to be with you. My name is Derek Feldman, and I'm with Angela White.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
And we represent Achieve and JGA, and we've been working on research over the last 3 years on millennials and what they do and how they connect, involve, and give to organizations. And we are going to, for this session, give you a little bit of insight into this year's report that we've worked on and debuted, obviously part of MCon, of course, today that you're experiencing. This is the third year of our research overall, and I would say every year we've really learned something different. Our first couple years we focused on giving and volunteering,
Right.
and then of course this last year, which is the 2012 year, we've really focused on communication and understanding how they are, for the first time hearing about a nonprofit and then taking it from there to get involved.
That's right. And I think we've really drilled deeper to understand the motivations of millennials and to understand that it's way more than just them making an online transaction with you. They really want to be involved and engaged. So whatever time of day it is that you're watching us in your time zone, we're excited to get started and talk to you about the survey this year, and as Derek said, around the connect, involve, and give. I'm just going to share a little bit of background on the survey, and then Derek's going to talk about connect and involve, and I'll follow up with give, okay? And then, of course, we'll have our time to chat online.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's great.
So I'm pleased to share a little bit about the process of the survey, and then Derek's going to talk about the connect and the involve, and then I'll follow up with the giving statistics. So this year we surveyed with 14 research partners and one general survey, and we had 6,522 completed surveys, which when we started this project 3 years ago, we had about 2,100 completed surveys. So we feel good about our ability to increase the target market of millennials that we're penetrating. Now, of course, with 6,500 return surveys, we feel good about that, but this doesn't speak for the entire millennial generation, obviously. This year also we added two important features to the survey that we hope will really enhance what we can share with you. We added focus groups of millennials across the country. We conducted 3 focus groups in Indianapolis, Seattle, and Washington, D.C. So throughout the report and throughout what we shared today, we're going to share what we heard in those focus groups as well as the completed online surveys. And we did add a new survey of nonprofit professionals who are working with millennials. And our purpose was to understand their successful strategies to engage millennials in their nonprofit. So we are really excited to share those case studies with you. We will continue to update those at millennialimpact.com. And in fact, if you have a great story about how you're working with millennials, we'd encourage you to share that with us. And then as you go back to the Millennial Impact site, you can see those new additions and case studies that will help all of us learn how to engage and involve and gain financial support from our millennials. So we're going to get started. I'm going to turn it over to Derek to work on the beginning of the results, and then I'll come back at the end and share with you the philanthropic results.
So as Angela mentioned, we focused our survey and our research into 3 core categories. One, how they connect, how they involve, and then how they give. In years past, our focus was just on the response overall of their involvement. And so we really wanted to look at the continuum of engagement overall for most individuals. And so as we organized a lot of the survey information, the questions and the focus groups, we really carried through that. Tell me how you first heard about an organization, who helped you learn about them, what was your first action, how did you take it from there, all the way to the point of either becoming a supporter, an online activist, or really a really great involved, engaged individual constituent for them. So the first section that we're going to talk about here is on connect. And in the connect piece, we focus on the message that they've heard and what they were responding to overall. You'll see here on this slide that we'll have a lot of different infographics, and you can provide and receive some of those designs and infographics at the millennialimpact.com. So let's go ahead and dive in. One of the first questions that we asked was around websites and how important they are, and then how they specifically learn about an organization. By far, the website, social media, and e-newsletter are the primary drivers of helping millennials connect initially to nonprofit organizations. We know that through that social media aspect it was important, but it's really important not necessarily from the organization itself, but a friend or a peer who talked about a nonprofit. So for instance, if I post something on my Facebook page that says you should definitely come out to the Alzheimer's walk, this is what's happening, then my other friends and networks of all the people that are following and are my fans are hearing about that organization through that point. What they're then doing is then taking that point of that message, that post, and then going to the nonprofit's website to then obviously hear more about the event, the activity, and so on. So that social media aspect is important, that we understand it's not necessarily from the organization itself, but it also comes from people like peers like us who might talk about the nonprofits that we're supporting overall. Of course, e-newsletters are very important, and you're going to find out here very shortly that it's that e-newsletter content they're viewing on their smartphones that tends to be an important piece for them to learn about a nonprofit. And of course, the website continues to be the hub, the place in which that they're going to find information. And we'll talk here in a minute about what they really want to discover. You know, we always get the question about whether print is dead or not, you know, and really it's not. It's there. We just have to be a little bit smarter about it. We brought this question into the focus groups to ask them, you know, what specifically in print, if at all, do you really want to hear or understand or, you know, experience with a nonprofit? What we heard is, you know, small postcards, event-based type material that help us understand where I can participate, volunteer, or get involved from that standpoint. What we did hear from millennials is things like annual reports and donor rolls and all those different kinds of reports that we send just for pure information purposes is not necessarily wanted by millennials as well. And of course, face-to-face still does well too, you know, 17% overall, and that really comes from a lot of their peers and networks in which that they're talking about a nonprofit to get involved. So let's go ahead and go to the next section where we want to talk a little bit more about email. Email by far is, as you saw before, a really important piece, a crucial component to helping involve millennials as whether they be givers or whether they're primarily just consuming information. And when we looked at and started to ask questions about what you really want to see in an email, we discovered several things. First and foremost, that news and events, that event piece. And I'll talk later about how events are really important to this generation, but how I can activate and get involved in your organization right away. When we think about the news, a lot of the feedback we heard in focus groups and in the comment section in a lot of the surveys is short, very brief, succinct pieces. You know, this is a generation that grew up with Twitter, obviously, being very important. So let's look at short, succinct information that tells me a little bit about the beneficiary, the people you're serving, how I can get involved, particularly with an event or participate, and then how I can serve as a volunteer with you as well. Opportunities to volunteer were really important, and then maintaining that impact piece, which helps people understand in every month, if you do a monthly newsletter, how the gifts and how your volunteers are impacting their work. Those are very key pieces. Long emails, you know, we actually showed emails in our focus groups. We had 3 or 4 different types. We saw very big visual emails be successful, as well as emails that had very small copy, very short, succinct copy overall. If you plan to do a full article in a newsletter, it didn't go too well with millennials that we represented or had in the focus group. In the next section, I want to talk about smartphones overall in this Connect area. This was one of the biggest pieces that we discovered, and although I think we knew it, we didn't know the extent of it overall, is the use of mobile and smartphones. What's important here to understand is that this generation is mobile by far. And we need to remove and think less about text giving and more about our communication through mobile device. We discovered that 77% of the millennials that we surveyed have smartphones. And the ones that don't, oh my gosh, 70% of them are going to go get one soon too as well. And we discovered that the first way that they're receiving information, if it's not through a peer, it is through their smartphone device. They're looking at content, they're reviewing information, they're looking at what their friends are saying, and they're also viewing your newsletters and your websites through their smartphone. So we need to think about how we present ourselves mobilely to this generation, how we have a mobile website that helps them participate in an event, it helps them to participate as a volunteer, and what's also really important is that we use our newsletters in that small, succinct way to communicate the ways that they can get involved right now. As you'll see there with email and social media and their news capability, they're all interested in using that mobile device to really connect with that organization. So if you're going through any website transitions or anything else, this is the time when I would highly recommend that a mobile platform, a mobile website is a part of your strategy for sure. We also discovered that they really are not as interested per se to look at the check-in process using Foursquare, some of the other new technologies that we may see. Definitely check-ins is happening, but not to the extent that we may heard about through other means as well. And so when you think about all the things, the tools and the resources that you want to use, we know that social media, Facebook and Twitter are the primary components. Foursquare and a couple of the other check-ins are important, but not as important with this group. Let's talk about Facebook, because by far is one of the biggest things that we're seeing, not only branding happening, but communication for nonprofit organizations. And when we asked some of the millennials, both in our focus groups and in our surveys, what is it that you want to hear? What is it that you want to talk about and converse with organizations within Facebook? We heard about great events. We heard about the upcoming ways and the people and understanding the ways that they can get involved right away. Some of the events included how some of my friends are participating in it. And then when we think about articles and statistics, the ways in which that money is being used, highlighting some of the people that you're serving, of course, was really important as well. In that connect piece, what's also important about Facebook is making sure that we're creating that humanistic conversation with people, because that's really what the Facebook environment is. When we were talking with individuals within the focus group, we realized a lot that they were challenged with some of the presentation in which that organizations are within Facebook, and they're using it much more as a PR tool and less as a conversational tool within the environment. And some of them said it's hard to share something when it's not shareable. So we need to create posts and content that draws out the conversation around an event. One of the really nice examples I like to use is, we can talk about the great event and just say, come to our event on July 19th, or we could say things like, you should check out this person and look at the chicken dance that the CEO is doing on July 19th. That will draw in the conversation a little bit more. So we need to bring in that humanistic aspect, of course. And of course, when we look at which ways that they're following and interacting on Twitter, as you see there, they're just following. That's really a passive form of involvement. Some are reposting, retweeting, of course, or following hashtags are really important. But overall, they're definitely having a passive relationship more on Twitter than we're seeing, obviously, through Facebook earlier. And as I'll share with you on the screen right now, we also have within the report some things that we heard from some of the millennials about the different types of social media platforms that exist. You'll see right there that there's Google Plus and Pinterest and a couple others. By far in our survey, Facebook and Twitter were the #1. Google Plus and all the others were lower in their teens, percentage-wise, of usage. Again, this is one of those where if you have limited resources or you're trying to think about where to start, Facebook and Twitter would be the primary ones to go forward. And as we looked at it too, we tried to explain here some of the responses from millennials are viewing some of those social media platforms and how nonprofits should consider themselves within those platforms as well. All right, now since we talked about all the connect, let's sort of recap a little bit. In a lot of the connect pieces, what we learned overall is that mobile is a primary place where they're finding information. They're looking at your e-newsletter content. They're looking at their mobile websites to not only participate in events, but also to sign up to volunteer. Yes, giving is an aspect, but a much smaller aspect that Angela is going to talk about a little bit later. What we also realize is that through the peers by far, and you're going to see that here in a little bit more, is that peers are providing that opportunity to brand an organization and to continue and carry through with that message. So as we look at a lot of the work that we're doing through social media platforms or some of our messaging, let's make it shareable so that they can spread it to other friends so that they can connect as well. In our involve section that we're on right now, this is where we sort of take that continuum of when you first learn or when you first hear about an organization to how are you involving yourself going forward. And so now everything that we're going to discuss in this section is focused on volunteerism, activism, as well as some of their leadership involvement overall with nonprofits. Let's go ahead and get started. So in the involve section, what we realized this year, really big finding, is that there is a new continuum that exists for volunteers, especially millennial volunteers. I would say 3 or 4 years ago, even 5 maybe, that a lot of organizations were focused on young professional groups as their opportunity to get millennials involved. And although that's a great strategy, it's one strategy and it's not the entry point. What we're discovering, at least what we discovered in a lot of our report and a lot of our research and focus groups, is that millennials want to first start with a small opportunity to do things like share information through social media, maybe help you with marketing from their own desk in their own home, in which that they feel like they're being activists for you. We then see that they move to one-time events where they'll participate either by themselves or maybe bring in a few friends. And that brings us to that group volunteering aspects where I might organize an activity for my friends, 3 or 4 of my friends to come out, participate in a cleanup, participate in some aspect of the organization's work, and then move into, if I so choose to, with my group or even on my own, a more formal leadership participatory role of, say, a young professional group. So as an organization, we need to look at the continuum that exists for volunteerism, from I just communicating through you to a small micro volunteering experience on their own, probably virtual, to one-time events, group events, and then leading into that formal programming of young professionals. So we need to think about it and provide opportunities across that continuum. What we also discovered is that they want to volunteer, and when they volunteer, a lot of that participation is that it's in that short-term commitment, but it also means that we're going to use a lot of their different skills along the way. And in fact, when we look at some of their skills, they're interested in how taking the skills that they use in their work, in their business, with their family and friends who all help a nonprofit organization. When we look at how they're finding these opportunities, what we really discovered is that a lot of them are finding the opportunities through peers, of course. I think we knew it, but we didn't know the extent of it. And this year, by far, 81% of their peers are telling them about that, about the organizations they should support and then really just get involved with. What's also important here, as I mentioned earlier in the connection piece, they're doing that through social media, they're doing that through email forwarding on content, and they're doing it through their mobile device. So we obviously need to create a mechanism for somebody like myself to view a volunteer opportunity, then click onto that website, sign up, tell my friends about it, and then go through the process of actually volunteering with you. So that's really how we're seeing that perfect match, I would say, happen with volunteerism. And of course, as I mentioned, that harnessing of the skills is really, really important. We heard time and time again, both in focus groups and in surveys, that I want to be used effectively if I'm going to help and provide some of that opportunity of time to you. What they're really interested in, and we get this concept of changing the world, and really what they're saying to us is, give me a challenge, give me something your organization is doing or struggling with, let me help you with it. And if that means that I can spend my own time, in my own house, in my own apartment, wherever I am, to develop that solution, I can, and then report back to you and help you do that. Organizations like Spark.com provide some of those platforms, and that's definitely what we're hearing with some of the millennials that we're interviewing and also had surveyed. What they're also telling us, obviously, as you see here on your screen, is that they do want to participate in some of that event-based model piece overall, in using some of that background experience through work and that interaction with their network to help you. And it's interesting, we just did a survey of about 3,000 donors to an organization, and in that survey, what we heard a lot of them say is that, well, I want to help you, and my first way I want to help you is tell other people about you. That's a role that I want to take on. Doesn't necessarily mean I got to commit an hour in person to you, but it's definitely a role that I can help you take, given that technology has allowed us to do that. And you see in your bottom right-hand screen here too, is that they do want to participate in nonprofit boards and in leadership. They do want to have that opportunity to help provide some of that creative direction overall. And so when we think about some of that creative direction, that leadership and that advice and counsel, this is the opportunity for you as an organization to not just create a young professional group or a group on the side, a junior board, but actually integrating it. It's sort of a one. How can we actually have millennials on our board that can help us make those decisions rather than just sort of off to the side? So that's a really important key piece here too as well. One of the things I want to mention about event planning and events because I think it's, as we'll start leading into the rest of this, especially into Angela's give part, is that we noticed a lot around just events in general. You see it comes up here and how they want to volunteer. You saw it earlier about how they want to communicate to some of their friends about events and so on. What we're discovering is that millennials have always grown up with an event-based model for nonprofit exposure. And so what that means is that as soon as they were even in grade school and in middle school, they're at school and they're raising and they're doing run walks. They're doing the sponsor me to ride my bike for a mile. All of this event type stuff they've grown up with. And so it's not unnatural to see them gravitate to an event-based model when we even look at them to raise money or to participate as volunteers, as you see on the screen here. And so that might be an early entry point. However, we do have a track that you should take after that, and that's that volunteer continuum to say, great, thanks for experiencing this event. We have different ways that you can help us or participate with us going forward. So don't be surprised as you see some of the event pieces throughout this presentation, because what we're seeing is that that is a key piece, but that's something that's natural to them at this point. When we look at how they want to and why they're not participating in boards, obviously lack of time, and that's probably consistent across a lot of other generations, we speculate, but looking at never being asked, of course, is another one. But overall, this is a chance for you to sort of take it and say, how can we incorporate millennials in some of that advice and counsel role? So now I'm going to shift over as we talk about some of the give aspects. Before I do that, I just want to kind of make sure we're all on board with where we are. We've really started this conversation discussing how they connect, how they take mobile and using their friends to connect and share different things, how a message is the first time really translated through that mobile device needs to be short and succinct. We then realize that after they hear that, they're then involving themselves in a continuum of involvement with an organization, from micro-volunteering small pieces, virtual, at home, on their own time, to participation in a young professional group towards the end. And lastly, that they do want to participate as leaders, and that event model might be an opportunity for you to just get them started with you, but you need that track going forward. So now I'm going to turn it over to Angela to bring us up to speed on some of the giving aspects and what we heard.
Okay, so I'm happy to be with you to talk about the give section of our research. And as Derek said, really the connect and the involve is key to the give. We can't just start with the give, and that's probably true across generations, but we've heard very clearly that it's important to the millennials. So as you see here, their biggest pet peeve is when they don't know how their gift is going to make a difference. And we clearly heard from them that they're inspired to give in the moment. We're reluctant to call that impulsive, but we would call it extremely responsive. And so how are we prepared to motivate them and then to allow them to act in the moment, okay? So we're gonna move ahead and talk about their giving preferences, what motivates them, how much they're actually giving, and how this role of the event, as Derek talked about it, very key to them, how that is interrelated to their giving, okay? So this has been true over the course of our 3 years of survey work. The majority of those who responded to our survey give to nonprofits. This year, 75% of those surveyed said they gave a gift in 2011. Okay, 75%. You see on the screen here, their single largest donation to you was majority of them between the $1 and $50 range, 34% saying that was my single largest donation in that range. Another 24% between $51 and $100. You see the stats. Look at 1,000 plus. 7% of millennials said my largest gift to you was $1,000. Okay, so key fact here: 75% of them made a gift in 11. And when they think about their own work with nonprofits, 47% said they would give their time. Only 16% said they would just give money, and 37% said they would give both time and money, which is where we think the sweet spot is and the opportunity for us to engage millennials in both giving of their time and their resources to build that longer term relationship, okay? So how do they prefer to make a donation to your nonprofit? Well, probably as no shock, and especially when you listen to Derek's section, 70% of them prefer to make their gift online. Okay, that's their natural way. That's their natural way to transact a purchase online. It's second nature to them. 70% of them want to transact their gift online. Look at the next one though. It's a pretty big drop from the 70, but 39% said they prefer to give in person. Now, what does that in person mean? Well, as we've drilled down on the research, we know a lot of that in person is at the event, at the run walk, at the whatever other event, they want to be at your nonprofit and they want to make a gift in person at your event. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. But again, you see the role of the event. Now, this might be surprising to most of you, but 34% said they prefer to give via the mail. So we see that direct mail is not dead, but I know what we heard in the focus groups was kind of a dichotomy there. Some folks saying, don't mail to me, I don't pay attention to that, I don't want that. And other folks, actually, millennials in the focus groups, who said, hey, look, I don't get a lot of mail. So when I get a letter from you, it stands out in my mailbox. It's kind of cool because I don't typically get mail of that nature. Okay, and this is the generation that's getting their bills online. Going to the mailbox is not a daily occurrence probably for them. So the mail factor is still there. Direct mail is still there. What also might be surprising to you, and we're going to look at these statistics in detail in a minute, but only about 7% said they gave through text or a mobile site. About 3% said they'd prefer to give through Facebook, 14% payroll deduction, and 15% over the phone, a phone-a-thon pledge, a telefund, okay? So key to this slide, the big drivers, millennials prefer to make a donation online, give in person, which translates to events, and responding to mail, okay? We think the future for mobile giving is uncertain at this point. Clearly, from the research Derek presented, your opportunity to engage and involve millennials through the information they access on their mobile device is key, okay, clearly. However, when we asked, have you ever donated to a nonprofit through your phone, 85% said they did not, 15% said they did, and we asked them if they'd ever made a donation to a nonprofit on Facebook. Overwhelmingly, 90% said they had not, okay? So we really aren't sure how that will unfold because when we asked them, what is your hesitation to giving to a nonprofit with your smartphone, 47% said they'd never been asked to. And so perhaps if we ask more, they will respond. However, 42% said they were worried about security. And now what we heard when we questioned that in our focus groups was that they really were more worried about privacy. Okay, and at that point in time when we were doing the focus group, the changes in privacy settings and rules in Facebook was taking up a lot of time in the press, and so they were engaged in that. So we're not really sure the security privacy issue and that you haven't asked them. But if you link that back to the previous slide about where they prefer to give, right now a very small percent would prefer to give via their mobile device. So again, the future uncertain, we think, for mobile giving, but that does not at all negate how important it is for you to communicate in a way that they can access it. And remember that call to action, they can respond via their mobile device. All right? So let's look at what inspires these millennials to give. What inspires that 75% of our respondents to make a gift? Well, 42% of them said they would give to what inspires them at the moment. So remember that call to action, a way to gain their support right away, not an email that then requires them to have to go to a desktop to actually read through it all and to find the website, etc. But how do I make an appeal to them that allows them to see it and respond quickly on their mobile device? Okay. Their biggest pet peeve about nonprofit fundraising is when they don't know how their gift will make a difference. So it's really important to them to show them the impact that will be made, okay? Now, we know that's a challenge when you're talking about the impact of a $10 gift. Remember, only 7% said their biggest gift was $1,000 or more. So we think it's really important that we have to break down the message, break down what we're trying to raise money for and what kind of impact their gift will make at that smaller donor level, okay? So when you don't tell them how their gift's going to make a difference, that is pushing them away from making a gift to you. When you tell them how much to give, they don't like that. Now, what we think from listening to focus groups, where we think this comes into play is not that you've asked them to check 25 or 50 or push that button on the email response. It's more about that they're not motivated by the goal amount of your campaign, by the fact that you need 500 donors by Friday. Okay, the dollar piece is not the motivation to them, okay? It's the story, it's the impact, all right? And their third biggest pet peeve is when they get long letters in the mail. Now, you might say, well, that's interesting because you told me 34%, preferred to give through the mail. So I think we have to, again, watch the messaging there and how do we send the message through the mail to them, and getting long letters is not the way to their heart, apparently. So we need to be ready to be able to have them respond to what inspires them at the moment. Ensure that not all our messages are focused in any one channel of solicitation, and that we are at the risk then, if they are, of being automatically ignored. Okay? Derek talked a little bit about the peer and family influence, how they want to volunteer as a group, how they really want to share information and influence others. So we asked, have you ever used friendly persuasion with your peer group or your family to ask them to make a gift to a nonprofit? And the good news is 71% said they had, about 16% said that's not my thing, and another 13 had not had the opportunity. So if we look at the 84% who either said they had or had not had the opportunity, if we can provide them the opportunity, we've got a really powerful group of people who are here who can spread our message and encourage others to give. So let's look at how they can do that. So we asked those who had used a little friendly persuasion, what ways did you help raise money for an organization? You're not going to be shocked here. 64% said I spread the word. I share that information I receive. I ask others to give. Okay. 58% said through a run or walk event. 42% raised through donations or pledges, probably toward an event. 38% selling tickets. Okay, so you can see the importance again of the role of the event. And as Derek said, they have grown up in this event fundraising environment. And remember, when we looked at volunteering, they want to volunteer in a group. And so in an event, we're really combining the volunteer piece and the fundraising piece they can do together. Okay, 40% looked at the way they promote you on Facebook as a way to help you raise money. Again, not a huge percent of them are making an actual gift on Facebook, but they're promoting you on Facebook, and they believe that's helping you in raising money. So again, this role of the event is very important, okay? But let's remember not to overcharge for our events to millennials. We've got to go back to that chart showing their average gift size. We better not have a run or walk that's $250, right? Or a sponsorship that needs to be $5,000 if we want to get them engaged, okay? So Derek and I are going to come back and talk a little bit about the conclusions here and give you some more examples of specific clients that we've worked with and how they've engaged millennials. All right.
So as we end here with our conclusion, we're going to spend some time in each one of the sections again to talk through some of the key highlights and then some organizations that have been successful. Of course, remember, you can go to the millennialimpact.com, and the report itself also throughout the piece had different case studies and organization examples. We even highlight some really great mobile pieces, but I'll give you some examples here in a minute. On the connect piece that we mentioned, first, make sure that some of our website communication pieces overall include some very short, succinct pieces that help a millennial understand how to get actively involved. And as we look at some of that connect, make sure that we're using the sharing ability of what you send to enable somebody like a peer or friend to share that with their network. And so that would be something like in an email newsletter, listing a particular piece of news. It might be a really great one-line sentence that says, this is what's happening, read more, share this with others.
Right. Different
opportunities there that you can do. A couple really great newsletters that we tend to like and have even highlighted in the report and also on the website. Charity Water does a really nice job with some of their reports and some of their emails. In addition, people even like public companies deal in the social space. Fast Company has a coexist area in their newsletter. Only has 3 stories, 3 big images, 3 one-lines that we thought were really impactful, and we heard some really great things too as well.
Right, and what we know with the clients we work with is that just taking your hard copy news content and throwing it in your email does not make an email newsletter, right? And so I think that piece about being able to be succinct and driving them to your website and then making your website friendly to them for a way to engage, not just the donate now button, but a way to volunteer, a way to connect. Right?
And one of the things that we'll even see with some of the people we work with is say, okay, well, let's just organize the newsletter into 4 major categories. There'll be something like, a big news piece in the front, after that an event, a volunteer piece, and then simply a last piece that could be used as an impact donation, what's occurring, and how the money has been used. Those 4 key pieces, nothing else, nothing in the sidebars, anything else, reduce some of that information. Because we know a lot of this is consumed through the mobile device, spend the resources. We recommend it. I know that it's challenging for some of us, but even you yourself are viewing this and probably tweeting and doing a lot of different things on your mobile device while you're viewing Angela and I talking through this. So make sure that you have a mobile-friendly website. That's a really key piece. A couple examples, we saw that the Met does a really nice job. The Met has a mobile site that allows you to do the key things millennials would want, and that was events, to sign up to hear, some of the performances. It had ways that they can volunteer and serve at the Met, and then it also had some key contact information that, thinking about if you're on the go.
Right. And that ties exactly to that piece about influencing others. So if Derek's telling me, hey, I had this great experience at the Met, you really need to go. And I can go right to that mobile site on my phone and buy the tickets or download a recording to listen to that moment. Again, Derek has inspired me in the moment, and I want to do it now. Right. I don't want to go home, call the box office, look online. I want to do it now on my phone.
Exactly.
Probably while I'm riding the subway or walking somewhere. So how we can make that environment for millennials to respond to the moment.
Yeah, and so when we look at that connect piece, I would say as you go through some of your website redesigns, this is the opportunity now to make sure that you ask some of your vendors to provide you with some of the mobile platforms. Make sure that you can change those, with time, if you have some things that you want to do, events, different things that you want to promote throughout. We did hear a lot about how they disliked mobile sites that had the same exact tabs on their website. It was very long, very lengthy, and it just really was a replication. So, you don't need that. Think about when you're on the go. We had some really good pieces here, as Angela and I were talking about, like the Met and others, that were thinking about the consumer, the person, the donor, the constituent who's going to view it on their phone.
That's right.
All right, let's go ahead and go to the involved section. As I mentioned, there's a really important piece that we discovered is this volunteer continuum that exists. We kind of knew it was there, but didn't know how to express it and how we incorporate those young professional groups. So I think the challenge for a lot of you that may have started in millennial engagement is they started with creating those young professional groups. And what we have discovered, and we have a couple clients that we're helping them with theirs, is they're kind of at a fork in the road. They started with great intention, with a great group of people that really started out very passionate, driven, had the time and ability to do it. Fortunately, those people have cycled off, and now we kind of see it going, but it's really come back into the organization, and now the staff is leading it. So there's a couple challenges with it. The intent was it's a volunteer-led kind of model, and now it's become a staff resource piece. And as we really highlighted in the report, that young professional group is at the end of that continuum. It's that formal programming that they're participating in. So if you do have one and you are sort of stuck in this road together, which way do you go? Here's an opportunity to at least bring those millennials who are interested in that formal program to have them create. Really need them to create that formal programming for you. And a couple other things is look at those volunteers, look at those people that are participating with you at higher levels, in that continuum. Maybe they've attended several volunteer pieces, several volunteer events. They've attended some of your fundraising events. Those are ways that you can then ask them to participate in that formal program as that next opportunity.
Right, and I think Derek's so right about the young professionals group, and what we're seeing with the couple clients we work with they're really taking that step back now with the group and engaging them in the micro volunteering. So it's almost like they started with the young professionals and now they're backing them up and giving them specific tasks. We need you to, do our Twitter feed for this special event, or we need you to be a guest blogger, or we need you to share the word with your group of friends. So it's utilizing that young professional group, almost coming back to the micro volunteering rather than work that we would think of maybe at the board table, because I think that that is not where they want to start. Right. Yet lots of people jumped in there. Yeah. So how can we now use that group to the best of our ability to continue to engage them in the work they want to do? So
I want to share a point about also group volunteering. We had a lot of information and a lot of discussion with some of the focus groups around group volunteering. And it was primarily because this generation is so peer connected, right? So they want to bring all these peers together. And a couple things that we discovered both in focus groups and some of the survey is that they want to experience volunteerism and activism together with their friends, but they don't want to be separated when they're at those. Yeah, once they get there. You know, it's kind of one of those where, you know, you have these events, everybody's doing cleanups, and we're all in 20 different areas, and you know, the intention was that we come together and share an experience together, but we're still separate. And so try to create that opportunity for those groups to come together throughout the experience. So it's, you know, if you need them, you know, you have them all work on the same cleanup spot together rather than the 20 different spots. Because that's really what will probably drive them back to the organization to do it. And then in addition, you know, if you do have things where you need them to do separate kind of stuff where, you know, one person's over here, and that is that you create times for them to come together and convene and network and be together, because that's really that peer piece, especially if that peer brought them together.
And then what you're going to get in that setting is they're going to share what they just did, what the impact was, how they felt about it, and they're going to strengthen that internal sharing of information and thus sharing it out to the broader community about your organization.
Absolutely. The last piece, I think, is around leadership, junior boards, and all of that. You know, we heard a lot in here that they don't want to be at the kiddie table. They want to be a part. They want to be integrated together. It's about the inclusion aspect of leadership overall for the organization. So if you do have a junior board, that's fine, but make sure some of those junior boards are actually members of the board where they can actually take votes and be participants, not just advisory and off to the side and comes together once or twice a year. That really defeats the purpose.
Right, and I think they know they can see right through us. Yeah, we're making busy work for them, which is not at all where they're focused. They want to share their skills and expertise.
Exactly. All right, well, let's move over to the give section. So, Angela, why don't you give us a few insights?
Well, I think, as we know from the connect and involve piece, it's really important to do those two pieces first. And so I think if I were giving tips about the giving section, I would say we've got to equip our millennial donors to talk to each other, give them the information to share and to push out. We know there are resource issues in your nonprofits. You know, we know you're working on major gifts and you're probably at your desk now saying, how am I ever going to have time to do any of this? Yet, if we don't engage this millennial generation, we know we're not going to grow our pipeline of future leaders, your board chairs, your major donors, your campaign leaders. So we've got to find a way to have the resources. And one way is to engage and equip our millennials to help share that message and do it for us. The other piece is we need to ask them. 75% of them give. If we don't ask, we're not going to be a piece of that. However, we have to ask them in the right way, okay? So we have to, as we've said, we're hitting this a million times, we have to be ready to accept their gift when they're ready in the moment to make it. So that mobile presence, a way to accept a gift quickly via their mobile device, and certainly in the website market if they are at a desktop, right? 70% clearly saying, I want to make my gift online. I believe, Derek, we've had this conversation where one millennial said to us, most of them say they don't really have a checkbook, right? And one person, I believe, said, I don't have those, what do you call them, stickers? And those were stamps. So, you know, to expect them to be writing a check and putting a check in the mail is not where we are. So how do we enable them to make their gift? How do we then deliver transparency and tell them where that money's going and how that money is making an impact? And I think it's not the institutional story. It's a story of a person who's been impacted and how their gift has made a difference. It's the CEO telling you the story. It's the recipient telling you the story. It's not the institutional story. We know that as well. So what would you add to that?
I would say, too, as we look at some of the campaigns that you're doing, you test a lot of different designs, test a lot of ways that you can present data that helps it be really friendly. And focus on a few key stats. We had 3 or 4 different solicitations in a lot of our focus groups, and with each one of those solicitations, we had one that was really text heavy, one that had design, and one that had really a combination of both. And we saw the combination of both be successful,
Uh-huh.
where there was really good information, maybe one or two paragraphs, and then really the rest of it provided key data points.
Mm-hmm.
Some in a nice design. It had text overlay on a photo that says, "This is the person you're helping. This is the individual that we're there." Because a lot of millennials, just like a lot of other donors, won't experience the cause overall. And continue that story, use it through social media to help show, the recent pictures of the people that you're serving and their stories.
And make it easy for them to show that they helped someone and to forward that information. Derek, the website that we've looked at before about buy an acre of land.
Yeah, Conservation International.
Yeah, and I can buy my acre and then I can forward to my friends that this is the acre I bought, or I bought this acre for Derek's birthday. You could do the same for your friends. So how do you continue that conversation is a very good point.
Yeah, and we do see that, the team peer fundraising, there's a substantial amount of them that are raising funds for nonprofits. And so that peer fundraising is important, but it's only going to be driven by your ability to motivate the millennial to continue, your ability to provide them some really good resources and information that's shareable, and then your ability to keep, recognizing them for their contributions and their support. So you got to put that mix into some of your peer involvement overall. Well, I think that pretty much finishes everything today. We're so thankful that you're able to participate in the session with us today, and hopefully you're having a great MCon day overall. So thank you.
Thank you very much.